Damien. Taurus spoke in a strained tone. The cameras and voices were distracting. Damien answered Taurus, but Monson could not hear them, could not hear any of them. Cyan looked like she had never looked before. Appearing taller than normal, being on the first stair of one of the many landings of the staircase, her mountain of dark hair was curled and pulled elegantly to one side as rosy color lit up her cheeks. Monson realized that she, Cyan, was wearing makeup. She never wore makeup. She did not need it. Of anyone on the whole planet, she did not need it. Monson wanted to look at her dress, but found that he could not stop looking at her face and eyes. Her eyes were soft. Those eyes dropped away from him, enabling him to look away from her face. Cyan Harrison had wrapped herself in dark, smoldering black satin. Her dress was beautiful and posh, as any that one would find in Corin's Main Street shopping district. Monson looked her up, then down, then up again. Full length with a slit to mid-thigh, the dress weaver magically twisted liquid darkness into a tangible, albeit airy form. A single teardrop cutout right below her neckline gave the dress its final flare. Monson tried not to stare at the open space. Ultimately, he could not decide if it was the dress that made the girl or the girl that made the dress. Regardless, it fit her. The dress fit her like it was painted on. This confirmation did not only apply to the physical sense either, but to her overall presence. She was reserved, while being totally overpowering in beauty and personality. He wanted to tell her his thoughts, but stumbled across his words, even as Damien steered her away at a brisk pace. The touch of Taurus's hand jolted him. "Come on, Monson. They're expecting us." Taurus steered Monson up the remainder of the stairs, gripping him firmly as they ascended. They touched upon the final landing of the staircase, momentarily overwhelmed by the grand entrance doors towering above them. A virtual flood of flashing lights smacked he and Taurus, forcing them to slow their pace as they stepped into the wider space. Reporters littered the place like rats in a junkyard, many screaming hysterically and calling Taurus's name. Off a short distance, Monson saw Cyan and Damien talking with a group of reporters, while burly security men stood impressively on either side. His gaze narrowed in on Cyan's face as she spoke. She could hardly hide her irritation. The sound of his own name drew back his attention.
"Mr. Grey, what's it like being one of the richest people in the world?"
"How do you respond to continuing allegations of your grandfather's involvement of the events at Barty Bridge?"
"Is it true that you and Miss Green are engaged?"
Monson did his best to push past the groups of reporters and cameramen, while barely maintaining a diminishing composure. He muttered under his breath, "If one of those idiots mentions my grandfather one more time, I may just hit someone." The smile on Taurus's face remained firmly in place. "It's frustrating, I know. Like I said, unimportant musings of unimportant people. They can certainly try the patience." Monson leaned in a little closer to her. "You know, there's something that's been bothering me." Taurus gave a formulated wave to a few enthusiastic fans. "Really? What's that?" "Why do you strive so much for the limelight when you obviously find it so distasteful?" Taurus stopped her smiling, arched her back, and stepped to look at him. "Wow, that was random. What makes you say that?" Monson started to run a hand through his hair, which Taurus caught before it could get any closer. "Don't. You don't want to mess up your hair." Monson felt a renewed conviction touch him as Taurus took a step into him. He stopped her mid-step, placing a hand on her hip to keep her from moving any closer. "What's the truth, Taurus? What is it that you're seeking in all the camera flashes and gossip columns? What is it that drives you to remain in this lifestyle that you obviously can't stand?" The last hint of Taurus's frilly smile faded, as she looked at Monson. It was like the haze was lifted between them, like she was really seeing him for the first time. He actually pulled her closer without even thinking about it. She spoke with a distinct mark of an unsure person. "You're talking all crazy. Why would I do this if I didn't love it?" Monson laughed. "I don't know. You tell me." A pull at Monson's shoulder interrupted them. They both turned to face the newcomer when a particularly bright flash blinded them. The hand on his shoulder forced him to walk at a hurried pace, as yells of strained disappointment followed. What was happening? Why were people yelling? Monson attempted to clear his vision and head, all the while the sound around them growing gratingly loud. Monson heard the creak of a seldom-used door, then a resounding click, and then silence. His eyes started to clear, the form of a person slowly coming into focus. While the person was still fuzzy, his voice told Monson exactly who had been directing them. Mr. Gatt clamped Monson on the shoulder. "Mr. Grey, Miss Green, welcome to the 7th level of Hades. I hope you brought your idiot repellent." Taurus and Monson chuckled, each taking a quick glance around the room as their eyes fully adjusted. It looked like they were in a foyer, with thick velvety curtains that sat angled to soft wooden nightstands. A large open door spread into a long mirrored hallway, with many people bustling in and out. Monson refocused his gaze at Mr. Gatt, who grinned sardonically. "I'm afraid I'm all out of idiot repellent, Mr. Gatt, which is unfortunate, as the mere scent of the little vixen here seems to bring them out of the woodwork." Taurus giggled. "What did I tell you about those fancy words, Mr. Grey? Keep this up, and I might have to speed up my plan to seduce you." Mr. Gatt's eyes popped almost as if they were about to shoot out of his head. He glanced back and forth between Monson and Taurus. Monson thought he saw his lip twitch ever so slightly. Taurus did not seem to notice, however, as she spun on her toe and asked, "Where are the others? You didn't grab them too?" "They are not going to be introduced like you two and the rest of the candidates. Once people have arrived and are situated, you, Miss Green, Mr. Peterson, and Miss Harrison will all be placed along the center table. Your party will be waiting for you there." Monson attempted to control his sneer. Taurus affixed her vapid smile, the one she used when she did not want to reveal what she was actually thinking. Mr. Gatt leaned into the two students, giving them a quick once-over. "You two look wonderful. Please, follow me." Mr. Gatt led Monson and Taurus into the bustling hallway. They were definitely behind the scenes. There were all sorts of people pushing, pulling, and being directed into different places by the staff. Everyone looked haggard and busy, like their very livelihoods depended on this evening. Monson tried to ignore the fact that that was probably the case. There were those that were more notable than others, the most of which had to be the additional security force that were spaced every so often down the hall. Many appeared foreign, perhaps some additional protection for one of the many dignitaries that were making an appearance that evening. Monson was inadvertently reminded of the MIBs, Mark and Jim, and the glowing ball of energy that Casey used to wipe their memory. He grimaced a guilty frown. He should visit them in the hospital when he had the chance. Taurus remained silent the duration of the journey down the never-ending hall of staff and security. The pensive look on her face did not suit her. She had taken a hold of Monson's hand, her fingers interlacing his, as they walked down the hall, but the grip felt dead and limp. Monson just did his best to give her the time to work out whatever she was dealing with, despite the distinct feeling that he had done something wrong. A sharp detour in his thought process brought him to the subject of Casey and Kylie. Two childhood friends, once so close, now with enough bad blood to poison a vampire. Monson's thoughts sputtered. "Enough blood to poison a vampire?" he thought. Ugh, what a terrible metaphor. He made another mental note. Stop with the vampire love stories. Monson's mind instantly started to wander again when suddenly a whisper of a thought punched through. An unwanted mental image of a man ready to bite the neck of a beautiful, oblivious woman. A winged skeleton found in an underground tunnel in northern Africa. The story of Loch Ness, of Merlin's hidden castle, and many other outrageous and wonderful legends and myths. That whispered thought took on a new life as Monson considered it. It was abrupt, but spoke of so much potential that he almost stopped mid-stride in the moment of formulation. "Research," said Monson openly, but only loud enough for himself to hear. "You came to do research." Monson disentangled his hand from Taurus, giving her a half-smile and throwing up a finger asking for a reprieve. She smiled and nodded. He quickened his pace, coming level with Mr. Gatt. The professor noticed his behavior and cocked his head to the left to take a look at Taurus, now on her phone. Monson made no preamble as he spoke. "How's your research coming, Mr. Gatt?" Monson grimaced again. He had meant to be direct, but not so direct that Mr. Gatt did not know what he was talking about. "It is going very well, Mr. Grey. Why do you ask?" Monson chalked the eyebrow. "You know what I was talking about?" Mr. Gatt replied with the same slightly confused face. "Of course. I told you months ago that I remain here to do research. Were you not just asking about that research?" "Well, yeah. I just didn't think you would know what I was asking since it was so long ago. Do you remember everything you say?" Mr. Gatt chuckled. "Hardly. Only the important stuff." Monson scratched at his head in continued bafflement. "Why would me knowing you were doing research be important?" Mr. Gatt shrugged. "I am a teacher. You are a student. Of course everything I say to you is important." Monson rolled his eyes. That was a cop-out if he had ever heard one. He was not getting anywhere. He should try the more direct approach. "Mr. Gatt, do you know anything about the Garden of the Gods or the Midday Darkness?" The expression of controlled curiosity slid from the visage of Markin Gatt, quickly to be replaced by one of ironic comprehension. "It appears that you and your friends have finally become aware of Miss Cormac's activities." Monson's shock renewed. "You knew what Kylie was up to?" "Of course. I was the one that pointed her in the right direction. Though, if you are asking me about the subject, it appears that she has yet to find Sage's hideaway." Monson bit at his lips slightly, unsure as to how much he should say. "Don't have any helpful information, do you?" "I am afraid that I do not, my boy. I was on one of my many adventures when the elder Miss Cormac was here. I returned only recently to Corn for an amazing opportunity that did not quite seem to materialize. Now I am back to teaching. Not that I am complaining. I love teaching. I have missed it. Actually, this is my first year teaching in about 3 years." Mr. Gatt stopped short, looking thoughtful. "Well, perhaps that is not correct. I am not totally sure." Monson laughed. "I thought you remembered everything that's important." Mr. Gatt grinned. "My dear boy, at my age, the years just run together." He took a deep breath. "Back to the topic at hand. Miss Cormac, from what I hear, was a bit of a recluse. Did you know that her older brother was also the Horenveer?" Monson jerked, veering abruptly to one side of the hall, almost knocking over a man carrying polished silver trays. "No way!" Mr. Gatt nodded, dropping his head in a sort of conspiratorial gesture. "Damien Peterson idolized him. Maximilian Cormac. He was the first sophomore Horenveer. He actually almost won his freshman year, but that was before the competition was..." Mr. Gatt paused again. "Fixed?" asked Monson. "So, you have heard. Well, good. You and I should sit and talk about that sometime. I'm very curious as to how you won. Anyway, from what I heard, Sage Cormac spent a great deal of time with her older brother. You can ask him. He probably does not know the location of the hideout, but he may be able to give you some clues. You are a very smart student. I bet with the right motivation and a little luck, you could find Miss Cormac's hideout." Monson cocked the eyebrow for a second time. "The right motivation?" Mr. Gatt nodded. "Yes, the right motivation. You will find you are capable of extraordinary things when placed in the right circumstances." A tug at his arm announced Taurus's interjection into the conversation. "Okay, I'm bored. You should talk to me now." Mr. Gatt chuckled again. "You had better do as she says, Mr. Grey. The heavens themselves have been shaken by a woman's scorn. Avoid it as if your life depends on it. Some of the best advice I can give you." Monson attempted to object, but held his tongue as he glanced at the pouting Taurus. He had lost. Who can argue with that face? It was better not even to try. Taurus caught a hold of his hand with both of hers as they continued their walk down the endless hallway.
"I think that was the best meal I ever had."
Artorius rubbed at his belly suggestively.
"The dinner of elegance? They should really call it the dinner of delectable divine deliciousness."
Casey grabbed at an imaginary pen and paper, speaking as he wrote. "Note to self. Never, ever let Arthur do any marketing, especially anything that has to do with naming things."
Artorius scowled. "Shut up, Casey. Don't be jealous of my witty comments."
Casey made another mark on his pretend pad. "Re-examine possibility of mental health institution for friend. The delusions are getting worse." Artorius gritted his teeth and was half a second away from throwing a scrap of bread at the still writing Casey. He stopped, only as he caught a sharp look from Indigo. Monson smiled and looked down at his own emptied plate. Artorius got one thing right. That was really one of the best meals of his life. It was a good thing, too, as it gave Monson and Taurus something to focus on that was not the incredible awkward atmosphere surrounding the royalty candidates' table. Monson promised himself that if he ever got the chance, he would punch whoever put together the seating chart for the dinner of elegance. Everything up until the actual dinner had been just fine. Dean Dayton introduced Monson, Taurus, and the other royalty to the important people, quickly filing through a list of accomplishments and honors for each of the candidates. Monson did not even mind when his list was distinctively shorter than anyone else's. In fact, he would have been just fine with a simple name. After his introduction, Monson took his seat at the center table in the massive dining area of the senator's room. Dean Dayton continued talking, welcoming guests and thanking sponsors, but everything fell upon Monson's deafened ears. He was too busy worrying about being under the world's largest chandelier that just so happened to be exactly above him. Monson could not stop the mental replay of the massive jumble of crystals and lights falling right into him and his friends. He shuddered at the thought. The chandelier was mainly to blame for his complete lack of spatial awareness, though other bits of uneasiness, apathy, and fatigue also contributed. Sharp blue eyes brought him back from that quasi-reality. The dinner took a turn for the worse once he had realized who was also at the table. Apparently, the dinner planner felt that it was prudent to place all the students together, and without any time to prepare himself, suddenly Monson found Cyan Harrison sitting directly across from him. He should not have been surprised. Mr. Gatt did mention this little tidbit of info while they were walking the endless hallway. Regardless, he was shocked, and not in a pleasant way. Cyan did not appear to be in a good mood either, as she had hardly spoken a word the entire meal. Directly to his left, and not making things any more relaxed, was Taurus. She did not even seem to be aware of the happenings around her, as a distracted air poured off of her. Across from her, huddled close to Cyan, sat Damian Peterson. The Diamond also spoke very little, yet continually drained a Pepsi-filled wine glass, eyes narrowed in a sort of irate explicative. It was hard to gauge how the sports star was feeling, and Monson was not sure he really wanted to know. Monson did not know what to do, so he continued to eat, reaching a gloved hand towards a basket of honey-glistened bread. "You know, I've been meaning to ask you." Cyan's voice rolled over him, quiet, but cracking like a lion tamer's whip. "Why are you wearing gloves?" Monson's gaze shifted slowly from his bread to Cyan. Great. He was going to have to lie. He was a terrible liar. "They were a gift from me." Taurus leaned into Monson and placed a hand on his neck. "He wears them as a gesture." "That's pretty sentimental, Monson." Damian took another swig of his Pepsi. "I didn't picture you as the hopeless romantic." Monson ripped his honey bread in half. "Yeah, well, there's plenty that you don't know about me." Monson felt an intangible crackle and turned to see Cyan and Taurus glaring at each other. "Good evening." Monson and the others stopped talking immediately as Dean Dayton took his position for a second time. Monson turned, giving his full, but completely fake attention to the dean. He would have to avoid Cyan. She was not one to give up, and he did not feel like explaining the glove thing to her. He inadvertently locked eyes with Casey as his stare slid over the other students sitting at the table. He did a double take as Casey started to mouth something, pointing up towards the dean. "Dude, saved by the dumbbell. Lucky." Casey pointed at the gloves on Monson's hands. "I've told you before. Take off the stupid gloves." Monson rolled his eyes and turned his attention back to the dean. Monson and his friends entered the main inner chamber of the modern Coliseum and gasped when they realized that,
"Dude, did you know that the roof of the Coliseum opened?"
Casey had to yell to make himself heard. Artorius looked skyward.
"Can't say that I did. You don't think that's Barty's big announcement that the dean was talking about, do you?"
Casey shook his head, still staring straight up.
"I seriously doubt it."
Monson turned towards his group, minus Taurus, who had left shortly after dinner to get ready for the royal showcase. Cyan and Damian had, thankfully, not hung around, and Monson was not at all sad to see them go. The group all stood in the exact center of the modern Coliseum, with the rest of their classmates, looking around the room with wonderment. The whole space was completely transformed. The chairs, railings, and even the slight incline were all gone. Now the students stood on a dark cherrywood floor, in front of a massive stage, littered with every instrument possible. Guitars, violins, keyboards, drums, and even a grand piano sat stationary in all their wonder, glowing with a sense of readiness. To the far right, a giant DJ booth, completely enclosed by glass, held not one, not two, but 3 DJs, all hard at work at whatever it is that DJs work hard at. Casey stared at Monson, plainly suggesting that he wanted him to answer the roof question. Monson took another look around. "Do I ever know anything about this school?" Casey gazed at him blankly. Monson merely sighed. "Of course I didn't know that the roof retracted." Artorius gestured skyward.
"Pretty cool, though. I don't know about you, but now I'm ready to rock out."
Monson and Grayson laughed. "Rock out? You?" Artorius nodded.
"Oh, yeah. I've got moves you've..."
"Dude! Mr. Gatt! Check it!" Mr. Gatt, appearing from seemingly nowhere, stood at the front of the massive stage. Wild whooping sprang from the crowd of students as he picked up a mic and started to speak. "It seems my reputation precedes me." More whooping came. Mr. Gatt put up a hand to silence the crowd. "I will be the host for this evening's entertainment, and will thus be the master of certain ceremonies, in the hopes of preserving certain traditions. Long has the passion for life flowed through the young and vibrant. I would invite you all to take part as we proceed with this evening's activities." Sly grins on the students' faces, coupled with nodding heads, told Monson that he had missed something. He decided to let it pass. He did not have the energy or nerves to worry about anything else. Mr. Gatt shook his head in resigned amusement. "Ladies and gentlemen, students and teachers, Stage 1 of the spring solstice will now commence." Casey rolled his eyes as he gestured towards Monson. "Well, let's get the boring part out of the way." "The boring part?" asked Monson, more out of habit than actually caring. Casey answered distractedly, searching for Christy, who had been MIA since they arrived at the modern Coliseum. "Yeah, stage 1 is the boring part, dude. It's the part of the dance that all the cameras and politicians see. There will be some waltzing and proper displays, and then—" Casey stopped, a wide grin dominating his face. Monson waited for a punchline that never came. He repeated Casey's last words. "And then—" Casey clapped Monson on the shoulder. "Can't say, my friend. I wouldn't want to spoil it for you." The music started as Christy finally found her way back to the group, her hair looking slightly disheveled. "Where have you been?" Casey met her puffy face with an indifferent sort of curiosity, like he wanted to know, but would not care once he did. "Oh, you see, Music started as students took up positions on the floor. Casey waved aside Christy's explanation. "Never mind, we need to dance." Monson watched as all of his friends left with their respective partners, all except Grayson and Marie, who seemed to be arguing. Grayson was peering over his shoulder, twisting in his chair to see Marie, who was slightly cowering back a ways from him. Monson tried not to listen, but failed, as their voices seemed to carry over to him. "Stop acting like a maid for just a minute and come stand next to me." "But I am a maid, my lord. What if someone recognizes me? No, it's much better if I stand back a bit. I would not want to disappoint your father." Grayson rolled back a bit, lowering his tone. "Now, you know that isn't how it—" Monson stepped quietly away. He should not be listening to this. Tara should be about done, and he should go and find her. He bobbed and weaved among the rich and privileged, feeling as out of place as a beggar at a wine tasting. Monson attempted to ignore the piercing stares of parents, staff, and reporters that were not used to his appearance. "I've gotten soft," he thought. "I've almost forgotten how normal people react to the way I look." With a heavy heart, he peered through the many students dancing in pristine refinement upon the cherrywood floor. Some were very good, gliding from pose to pose like muses. Others were not as talented, stepping on their partner's feet as they attempted not to trip over their own awkwardness. Monson watched as Christy and Casey slid back and forth like ballroom pros. His eyes narrowed. "Stupid Casey pretending he didn't know about any of this," he thought. A few feet away, a Taurus was struggling. Monson focused all the more intently on the big guy and Indigo, who were stiff and stifled, yet seemed to be sharing a sort of moment. A look that could only be noticed if you knew each of the participants particularly well. He did not know what that moment meant, but it seemed like a step forward for a Taurus, and stepping forward was always a good thing. The splashy hem of light blue dress caught Monson's eye. "You look awfully lonely there, Mr. Grey." He shifted his body, squaring up to Ignace Ikeko. Monson beamed, pleasantly surprised. "Oh, hey, Ignace. It's been a while. What have you been up to?" She smiled a vibrant smile. Incredibly vibrant. More vibrant than Monson could remember seeing from her. It caught him a little off guard. "Monson, would you like to dance?" Taken aback, he recovered quickly and bowed grandly. "I would love to, my lady." Ignace led Monson out to the floor, her brown hair dangling over her shoulders and bouncing playfully. She moved with authority, forging a path to the center of the dance floor. Monson took her hand, and they started to dance. "Your leg appears to have recovered." Monson pivoted with Ignace as they maneuvered around the floor in a gruff but playful version of the foxtrot. "I've always healed fast. Just one of those special features I have, you know." Ignace squeezed his hand as he released her, and she spun out. He quickly whipped her back into him, her frilly light blue dress reflecting slightly. Monson laughed. "Special features, you say? Well, I'm gonna have to learn more about those." Ignace giggled. Monson's grin broadened. "Has anyone ever told you have a great laugh, Ignace? You should really use it more often." Ignace stared at him. "You know, you're different than I thought you'd be." Monson's eye reached skyward. "What do you mean? How'd you think I'd be?" "I'm not really sure, but different than you are." Ignace gripped him even harder than before. Really hard. Extremely hard for such small hands. Her strength was a little surprising. "You know, Ignace?" Monson grimaced slightly as he spoke. "You have really cold hands." Her eyes dropped to the ground as her grip slackened. Her hands fell to her side. She sighed. "Yeah, I've heard that one before." Monson caught both her hands, doing another one of those act-before-you-think maneuvers that he was becoming so famous for. He held both of Ignace's hands in his own, drawing her a bit closer. "I don't know why that would bother you, but for me, I'm happy. Concerning you, I'll take what I can get." Her face drooped in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I will take what information I can. I know so little about you. You have this funny way of keeping your distance. Not that I'm one to judge, but it's nice to learn something, anything about you, even if it's just something small." He cupped his hands over hers and blew warm air onto them. Her face lit up like a stoplight. He started to crack up even as she pulled her hands back, her face going an even deeper shade of red. "I'm sorry. That was totally inappropriate. I was just teasing you. Forgive me." "Oh, you were just teasing me?" Her voice lit up. He took a quick half-step toward her, spinning her before she could object. He spoke as they twirled. "I'm sorry I was so forward. I wasn't trying to embarrass you or anything. And I meant what I said. I'd be glad to get to know you better. Sometimes I forget how I'm supposed to act, even with my friends." The music ended and people around them started to clap. Terrible timing, as Ignace was just starting to respond. "What was that?" asked Monson, unable to hear. "I didn't quite catch it." Ignace walked away, shaking her head. Monson let her leave. He knew she was not angry. Exasperated, maybe, but not angry. He laughed again. He would have to apologize a second time later. Monson was just about to start toward Casey and the others when Ignace's retreating backside stopped mid-stride. She glanced to both her sides, then over her shoulder back at him. She about-faced and walked quickly, coming right up to him. Her tawny eyes met his in a stare that he held for a time. Slowly, her eyes left his as she glanced downward along the lapel of his jacket. Small fingers brushed his handkerchief. She put her mouth up to his ear and touched his chest, moving her fingers slowly. She spoke, inaudible at first, and then in a soft voice, "Remember, in your most dire of times." She walked away from him without so much as an explanation. Monson watched her retreat a second time, again in bafflement. "Remember? Remember what?" As soon as he had said it, he found he was not at all concerned with the answer. Not in the slightest. An hour or so later, Monson was starting to get bored. Besides that first dance, he had not danced much after that. Not that it surprised him. He was partnerless after all, but he still glowered at the fact. Where was Taurus? She could not still be getting ready. What was she doing, sewing the outfit herself? He took a deep breath and tried not to dwell on it. Thankfully, things seemed to be winding down, as the important business people, parents of students, and A-listers were leaving for some after-dance adult party where Monson was sure that deals would be made and careers would be brokered. He took another deep breath. Maybe he would just buy an island somewhere and hire some model as a private tutor. He rubbed at his face thoughtfully. "Now that plan has some merit," he thought. "Yet, who to hire?" Maybe he could sponsor a new reality TV show, tutor an ugly billionaire. Monson licked his lips. That would be a series that could be on Fox. Yeah, definitely on Fox. Another 20 minutes went by with Monson examining the difficulties in gainfully employing a model as a tutor. Deep in thought about the subject, he did not notice Mr. Gatt back up on the stage. Mic in hand, he pointed at the students. "Well, boys and girls, are we having fun?" The crowd of students responded half-heartedly. Apparently, Monson was not the only one bored. They should just give out the stupid award already and let everyone go home. "I am sensing some dissatisfaction. What do you have to say about that, Miss Green?" Noise jettisoned from every corner of the Coliseum, right as the lights died, cutting off in mid-glare. The rhythmic boom of a bass guitar now enveloped the crowd and grew steadily louder in a climactic build. All at once, massive floodlights illuminated a huge hanging platform, dangling far above the students' heads, and focused on a single spot right in the middle. Monson, up on his feet now, rotated in a circle, staring at the monstrous hanging projection screens now facing the crowded group of students. The screens flickered as they came to life, giving a real-time view of the now stationary platform. The hourglass shape stuffed in a green top and miniskirt made her instantly recognizable. Taurus. The platform descended directly towards the students, and, incredibly enough, the stunt did not cause outright panic. The students simply moved out of the way for the platform, which touched down with a loud metal clunk. Taurus stepped gracefully onto the regular stage. Then the students watched as the platform ascended. Artorius rubbed his hands in anticipation.
"Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let it begin."
He scooped up a surprised but amused Indigo and spirited her to the dance floor. Casey and Christy followed soon after, with Monson right behind them. The student body pressed up against the stage. In another one of her magical displays, Taurus started to perform. Most of the more prominent music students performed over the next hour or so, in which the dance at Collin University became a movie set for Dirty Dancing, the remix. Monson watched in fascination as the different students fell into a sort of foot-stomping collective, enjoying the vestiges of freedom gained in the absence of the prying eyes of staff, reporters, and teachers. The students popped and clicked, jimmied and jived, swayed and swaggered, all to every kind of music imaginable, from hip-hop to modernized classical. The scene was one of excitement and life, one that Monson enjoyed very much. It was during that frenzy that a new and profound phenomenon came to his attention: slow dancing. This was not something he had seen nor experienced before, so it took him a bit to figure it out. Couples slow danced, usually to ballads or love songs, and held each other close, swaying to simpering declarations of eternal love and devotion. At first, Monson thought the whole thing to be silly. What a boring way to dance. Then he saw the potential behind these actions. Sometimes it was hard to tell someone your true feelings or even really work out what those true feelings were. But this slow dancing gave opportunity for physical closeness and a certain degree of emotional intimacy. Intimacy that would be crucial as the relationship forged ahead.
You should write a book.
Dawn's voice echoed in an irritatingly disjointed fashion, but clearer than it had been recently.
Love according to Monson Grey. It has a ring to it.
Stop listening to my internal monologues. It's annoying, he thought. Monson returned to his thoughts. The couples looked so happy as they engaged in that particular mating ritual, and he found that he was happy for them. To love and to be loved must be a wonderful thing, maybe the most wonderful thing. The dance also highlighted once more how different his friends were. Despite the disappearing and reappearing Christy, Casey seemed to be having a great time dancing and flirting around with a dozen or so different girls, most from their class or the grade above them. He would pull one in and whisper something to them, touch them lightly on the arm, and laugh outrageously at his silly behavior. Not that things were all roses. There were a few tense minutes when Kylie and her date, Jason Mahler, were dancing nearby. Dancing might have been a liberal interpretation of what Jason and Kylie were actually doing, and Casey took the opportunity to dictate several colorful descriptions. Monson had become very nervous when Casey and Kylie had come suddenly face to face, which, if Monson was being truthful, he was not sure was completely by accident. Thankfully, the worst that happened was a flippant remark by Mahler, where the word schlub was thrown out a good number of times. It took Monson a bit to figure out that schlub was in fact an insult. Thank goodness for Grayson, the human dictionary. Artorius stuck to Indigo's side, grooving like it was the world's going-away party. He might not have been the most graceful, but he made up for it in enthusiasm. His infectious enjoyment spread to the rest of the group and was the primary reason for their complete craziness out on the dance floor. Even the controlled and prim Marie broke loose once or twice. She was even a good dancer.
Seriously, is there anything that girl can't do?
Asked Casey between gulps of bottled water. He gestured to Marie, who was out shaking it with Indigo. Christy was absent again, but Casey did not seem to notice, or care for that matter.
Dude, Grayson, if she can cook, you should just go ahead and marry her now, because I don't think you'll find better.
Applause filled the air, drowning out the possibility of Grayson's response. That probably would not have come anyway. Instinctively, Monson and the others looked toward the stage, searching for Mr. Gatt, who was front and center again, with the mic in hand.
So, I would like to inquire once again,
started Mr. Gatt, only to be manhandled by a wave of sound. The students, it seemed, were having a very good time. Mr. Gatt grinned playfully.
Well then, are you ready for the final stage of the solstice?
More cheers erupted from the crowd. He continued.
As you well know, the Royal Showcase is a long-standing tradition of Corrin's spring solstice. This gives us, commoners,
everyone laughed,
an opportunity to truly appreciate those special ladies which have been chosen as representatives of our school.
Monson nudged Casey.
You know, I've been wondering about something. Why don't the guys have a royal showcase? And who actually picks the winner of this thing?
Casey faced Monson and stared incredulously.
I swear, Grey, I seriously have to wonder if you're even listening to us half the time.
He shook his head, but nevertheless continued.
Dude, we voted weeks ago for the royalty. As a matter of fact, they probably have everything ready to go. From what I understand, it's tradition to announce the winner right after the last showcase performance.
Monson's face matched Casey's tone of incredulity.
So, what's the point of the showcase if it doesn't have anything?
Stop right there, Grey. Artorius pointed up at the stage. Your question will be answered even before you ask it. A curvy, chocolate-skinned girl with massive golden hoop earrings stood in the middle of the stage, with no less than 20 people standing behind her. She snapped her fingers once. A spotlight appeared. She snapped twice. All of her dancers ran to her side. She snapped 3 times, and big bouncing bass began behind her. She started to groove. For the most part, the showcases were pretty good. Amber Braddon, better known as Baby Beyonce, performed 2 R&B songs, during which she and her dancers took over the majority of the Cherrywood dance floor. Her act was catchy and made you want to stomp your feet and sway along with the thumping music. Monson enjoyed it very much. Next was Mary Summers. Mary performed a dramatic monologue from some Shakespearean play. Monson was not impressed. It was not necessarily the acting. That was just fine. It was the choice of monologue. He did not know much about Shakespeare, but if all his stuff was like that, then he would avoid it in the future. Kylie's performance came as a surprise. She played the violin. Not merely played, but drew that bow across that fiddle with incredible ease and skill. There was an unknown factor at work, an air about her as she played. Perhaps the combination of the red high-slit dress, blood-colored lips, and straight blonde hair that fell ever so often into her flowing bow. Monson could not say, but Kylie looked and sounded incredible. Applause broke out, filling the space completely as she finished her piece. Everyone clapped like maniacs, cheering at the unknown and unexpected talent. Monson smiled at the enthusiasm. Kylie seemed to enjoy the music, and seemed particularly enraptured by the piece she just completed. A very real statement, the music seemed to give her some sort of explicit joy, a joy that was shared by just about everyone in the room. It was not lost on Monson, however, that Casey was not clapping, his sour demeanor a sharp contrast to the crowd. Casey looked pissed as only he could.
Dude, what crawled up your butt and died? That was a beautiful song.
I know. I wrote it.
Monson started to ask, but Casey stopped him, shaking his head.
Look, I don't want to talk about it, okay?
Monson sighed. More of the same. A dressed-down version of Taurus Green came next. She walked onto the stage as Kylie exited, nodding her acknowledgement as she passed. A simple white short-sleeved dress clung lightly to her, but in no way diminished her appearance. In reality, the simple white brought out the color of Taurus's hair that seemed to flame with overt and desperate anticipation. Her face appeared on one of the large screens, and Monson could see the nervousness in her eyes. Nervousness that he would never quite understand. A guitar sounded as Taurus pulled up a chair and sat crossing her legs elegantly. On cue, another stage light zeroed in on her. She stared out at the crowd and with a solemn smile, started to sing.
Bitter trials, sordid reflections, colored emotion, distinguished pain. I suffer in the silence of the night. Ravaged mind, reaching fingers, broken heart, echoed footsteps, a body broken in the silence of the night. Streaking lines, gathering bunches, blotted corners, dripping droplets, tearful moments in the silence of the night.
Taurus Green walked off the stage, not even waiting for the applause, the aching hearts of hundreds of students reaching as she moved away. Discordance of soul and spirit, hollowing cries of breached defenses, any and all emotion wrapped in a protective cocoon of confidence, beauty and intimacy begging for a glimpse of freedom, a freedom that would not come. Monson felt at the corner of his eyes, pushing away his own sorrow.
I'm so sorry, Taurus. I'm so sorry for not noticing.
Dude, what's up with Taurus?
Casey stood at his side, whispering,
I've never heard that song, but I thought my heart might fall out of my chest.
Artorius and Indigo trotted up to the two of them.
So what, the cow can sing?
Indigo, said Monson, more than a little firmly.
Please, not now. I'm trying to figure out.
Monson trailed off as an awestruck silence filled the room. Casey spotted the reason for the silent commotion first.
Dude, turn around. Turn around now. You are so not going to believe this.
Cyan walked towards the center of the stage wearing an icy blue dress. Monson, Casey, Artorius, and every other person in the room with eyes stared openly at Cyan Harrison. She was beautiful, but that was not why they stared. It was her demeanor, her determination. What had gotten into Cyan? She strolled to the middle of the dance floor in almost total silence. No cheering, no catcalls. No one seemed to want to interrupt the moment. A couple of steps behind her walked Boston Timberland, and he looked...
Hey, Case.
Yeah, Gray?
Is it just me, or does Boston seem even more smug than usual?
Casey squinted at Boston, who was grinning outrageously. He studied Boston briefly.
Now, what do you suppose he knows that we don't?
Artorius piped in.
Maybe he was finally able to catch Cyan without dropping her.
They all laughed.
Come on, let's get better seats.
Monson and the others pushed through the crowd, making their way to the forefront of the circle of people surrounding Cyan, who had taken up a starting position in the very middle of the dance floor. Pockets of whispered conversations were popping up all over now, as she stood at the center of the floor. Mr. Gatt's voice spoke up, giving his final introduction of the evening.
Ladies and gents, I give you our last royal showcase at this year's spring solstice, Cyan Harrison.
From lambs to lions in an instant, the student body at Collin University broke out into their loudest appreciation yet. The music started to play, and Cyan started to step. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4. Twirl, skip, jump. Something was wrong. Monson could feel it. Something was wrong. The music. It was not the same from when he and the others had been spying on her. It was not that piece, but it sounded like
equilibrium.
Monson turned to Casey.
Why are they playing?
Without warning, the power died, leaving Cyan moving in mid-turn. She stepped, glancing around at the crowd, and then up at the stage. Behind the glass box, the DJs were running around frantically trying to figure out what was going on. A few people started to snicker.
What the heck is going on? Why did the music stop?
Casey glanced around the room.
While we're on the subject, where the heck is Boston?
A buzzing at his phone distracted Monson momentarily as a text from Grayson appeared.
Someone is messing with the power to the equipment.
Monson typed back with frenzied fingers.
How do you know?
Grayson's response came quickly.
Because I'm in charge of the audiovisual club and it's my equipment they're using. I set my pocket PC to send me status updates and to log any issues. Now, the log shows that there's an error in the power management coding.
Monson reread the message, amazed. He tried to stay focused.
Why would someone try to mess with the power? What's the point?
Monson tapped the send icon and waited for the response.
How should I know? Whatever viral code disrupted the power, it waited until now to execute. Maybe someone is trying to embarrass Cyan. That seems like the only logical conclusion.
Monson swore. The power was on the fritz and Boston was nowhere to be found. He did it. He had to have done it. But why? A replay of a small hand smacking the arrogance off a young, flamboyant face popped into Monson's head. Monson arrived at his conclusion. Boston was trying to get back at Cyan, and doing it in the worst possible way. Monson searched for something, anything to help the situation. What could he do to help? Was there anything? Would Cyan even accept it if there was? What would he do? Monson, having no recollection of when they arrived there, found his eyes glued to Cyan, who stood stationary amongst the restless, simmering students. Girls pointed, gesturing towards her. Monson focused in on her face, which was looking up. Cyan was staring at a man in the balcony. A man with silver-black hair and a regal disposition leaned over the railing, appearing concerned.
Her father, said Monson aloud. That has to be her father.
Monson swore again. The next time he saw Boston Timberland, it would not be a pleasant encounter for Boston. Monson began to move, starting towards Cyan. He had no idea what he was going to do, but he had to help her. He had to try and do...
Gray, I know what you're thinking.
Casey and Artorius both gripped him, just like they did the first time they saw Cyan's dance routine in the GM. Casey spoke again.
Dude, you can't yet. Let go of me, Casey. I need to...
Do something? And what are you going to do, Gray?
Monson spoke in a low mutter, but none of the words were audible.
What was that, Gray?
Monson did not answer. He did not have a plan, and they knew it.
I have an idea, Gray, but you're gonna have to trust me.
Monson just grimaced. Again, he hated it when people, especially Casey, said stuff like that. Casey nodded to Artorius.
Listen carefully, Gray. I want you to wait 2 minutes, and then walk out to Cyan.
But why would I? Casey put up a hand.
Trust me.
Monson held his tongue. Casey and Artorius disappeared, moving at a breakneck pace. Monson returned his attention back to Cyan, who was still looking up towards the balcony. He could see her trembling slightly, the desire to run away crawling over her smooth skin. She was trying to be strong, trying to finish the project that held her captive for so long. It was all so wrong, all of it. It was not supposed to happen this way. It was then that the unthinkable happened. Someone started to boo Cyan. The booing was low at first, starting as single voices around the room, but it grew louder and louder as time passed. Monson scowled.
Oh, how quickly they turn on you,
he thought. The pluck of a guitar string sounded as a voice rang out. A voice that Monson recognized, but could not believe. Casey stood up on the stage, guitar in hand, and standing in front of the mic. Behind him was Artorias on the keyboard, and Kylie on the violin. What in the...
Hello. Monson Grey? Paging Mr. Monson Grey? Can you come to the center of the dance floor? Miss Harrison's waiting for you.
Monson's jaw dropped.
This is your brilliant plan, Casey,
he thought. In one giant movement, every face in the room turned and looked straight at Monson. He stared back at them, all of them, for an extended second. Silence pressed in upon him.
Casey, you are so dead. I'm so going to kill you.
Monson hesitated, but undid his jacket and pulled at his tie. He made his decision.
So, it's a dance you want?
Whispered Monson under his breath.
Fine, it's a dance you'll get.
He took a shaky step, and then another, and watched as those around him parted. They cleared a path slowly at first, then more quickly as they realized what was happening. Monson's way became unimpeded, and Cyan came into view.
What are you doing?
She whispered as he closed in.
I'm coming to dance with you.
His gaze did not betray a single drop of emotion.
Look, I'll watch you for the changes. Show me when you want to come back together. And open up a bit, would you? This isn't going to work if we aren't emotionally connected. Oh, and try not to be afraid. Afraid? What are you?
Monson walked right up to her, coming incredibly close. He could tell that this surprised her, and grinned slightly at her discomfort.
Am I making you uncomfortable?
Cyan threw her hair back, starting to tremble with indignation. She squeezed her hands together and let them hang to her side, shaking them out for just a moment before grabbing his hands and placing them on her hips. She stepped closer to him, putting her own hands on his chest.
You were saying something about being uncomfortable?
Monson glared at her, but before he could say anything, the Cassius K trio started to play. The final note of Casey's voice struck at the same time that Monson pulled and dipped Cyan Harrison. He held her almost parallel to the floor, glistening sweat beating around their foreheads. Monson stood her up slowly to meet the looks of a bewildered crowd. Their approving roar exploded a half-second later. Their whooping and yelling were so loud that they would have awoken the dead if that were possible. Cyan grabbed Monson's hand, and they took a bow. He was not sure how they did it, but they did, and with style. He smiled smugly and leaned towards her.
You owe me big time.
They bowed a second time.
I owe you? What about me? You suddenly walk into my showcase? And save your butt from embarrassment? Yeah, you're welcome. Your father is waving at you, by the way.
Cyan's head whipped upward just in time to see the man with silver-black hair yelling at the top of his lungs and waving like a drunken sports fan.
How did you know?
Monson smiled knowingly.
I guess I'm just psychic, and you'd better be careful. Har, har, har. You are so funny. You owe me an explanation. Thank you, Mr. Grey and Miss Harrison. That piece was truly delightful.
Mr. Gatt was back on stage, standing to a surprised Casey, who was still holding the guitar. Mr. Gatt raised a hand, gesturing upward. The lights centered on him. Satisfied, He started to speak again. Collin University, are you ready to hear your next Augustine and Augustana? Monson and Cyan looked at each other. It was all happening so fast that they did not even have time to register it. The students began to file in around them. Filling in the open space, they hovered close to the stage waiting for Mr. Gatt. I have the envelope here. Mr. Gatt raised his hand, showing a small white envelope with a gold seal across the flap. Shall I? The crowd roared their approval. Mr. Gatt tore at the envelope. This year's royal couple is